Lay for Eddie.
I'd like to call this meeting to order, Lancaster County Council. It's good to see everyone out there this evening. As I know most of you here, as we have our first reading of our budget tonight. And before we get started, I'd just like to say a thanks to Mr. John Bogner, as this will be his last meeting here, as he moves back to Florida with his family. And we appreciate what you've done here in the county and wish you all the luck. So. All right, let's move down to our Pledge of Allegiance tonight. Will be led by veteran Gary Alden, and our invocation will be delivered by Mr. Alan Blackman. Would you please stand?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for all that you do for us each and every day. Lord, as we come together tonight for this very important meeting, Lord, we ask that as we entertain this budget, that what we do today and in the next two readings will be pleasing in your sight. Lord, we are proud of our county employees. We ask that you bless them. We ask that you be with them each and every day, guide and lead all of us. And Lord, forgive us of our many sins. These things we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. And again, Mr. Alden, we thank you and all our veterans for what you have done for our country. Let's move on down to our approval of our agenda. Do I have a motion? Motion from Mr. Carnes, second from Ms. McGriff. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. We have unanimous approval. We'll now get into our citizens' comments. Excuse me. Please bear in mind that this is not a period of dialogue with council or a question and answer period. This is your opportunity to address council with your concerns. I ask that you address your remarks to council as a body and not to any individual council member. Please speak into the microphone, state your name and address for the record, and you will have up to 3 minutes to address council. Your time will not start until you have provided your name and address. First, we have Ms. Tyndall Yarborough.
Thank you for that prayer, Alan. That was heartfelt. I am Tyndall Yarborough, and I live on Wiley Street here in the city of Lancaster. I am here tonight to just keep doing what I'm being told to do, is just keep speaking up for, let's say how people would say the less fortunate, the homeless people. There are now people that are sleeping outside on our streets, people that are not from Lancaster. And that's because Charlotte's coming down further, y'all. And I want to know what you as government leaders are going to do about the fact that hundreds of thousands of dollars, hundreds, including about 3 from this council, have gone to the United Way for a homeless shelter. And we don't have a homeless shelter, okay? We don't have one. That place has not been touched as far as what I can see up the street from my house in the past year and a half. I believe that it has belonged to the United Way for a homeless shelter. So it has been told to me that this is going on really for years, and I am so tired of seeing money being spent on things other than what they're supposed to do, which is to help give people a shelter over their head. So obviously the shelter is not the end-all answer, because we have to have programs, we have to provide things for people, and it's easy just to blow it off like that's what kind of happened at the city. I was told that they could make different choices. We all can every single day. We all mess up, but whenever you come face to face with these people, And I say these people as if I'm not included with them, but I am. They are much easier people to be around. You know why? Because they see this world through a different lens. And those people, we the people, look to our leaders to do the right thing, to be honest in their dealings, and to do what it is they say they're going to do, whether it be providing affordable housing. But what does that even look like? What does that even look like? Because I don't know anyone that can get into a house right now. So I don't really know what else to do other than do this, and that is just keep speaking up for it. It seems to be a popularity club as far as the certain agencies that are performing the nonprofit duties around here is a good way to say it, I guess. Y'all, people have no faith in the government because of the lack of accountability, and they're the ones that live. I'm included in this. See how much programs are not being afforded to them, but they're afforded in the budget. They're afforded in the budget, but they're not going to the people. So when I say we're about to be in a big mess, that's just my opinion. As far as Charlotte coming down further, down 521, and we are about to have a major crisis, a major housing crisis right here in Lancaster. If something is not done now, it's not going to be a safe place. It's not going to be safe for everybody to come here for a meeting. And everybody knows that. I know that. We've watched it happen in the major cities all over the country. We don't want to be like that. So as the county, y'all, please do something. Please do something. I don't know who's to be held accountable, but when you have lots of people living in the street and more in tents, I found the second tent now. It's not so much, I feel bad for people. No, this is a reality, and it's coming home, and it's going to cause problems, and it's going to be dangerous. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harper. I'm going to butcher this first name because I can't. Is it Ms. Payne? How you pronounce first name? Bobby. Okay, I can read that. Come on up. I see it now. I got glasses and I still can't see. Come on up, Ms. Payne. I apologize.
Hey there, my name is Bobby Payne, and I reside at 4382 Palmer Lloyd Road in the Beaufort community. And I'm here tonight. It's the first time I've ever done this. I met Miss McGriff in the hallway, and I said, I don't know why I get nervous coming in this building. I'm not a criminal, and I'm not paying taxes tonight. But I'm here to to make you guys aware of a security concern that I feel we have at the Heat Springs Soccer Complex. It's a beautiful facility. I'm so proud that Lancaster County has such a beautiful facility like that Heat Springs Soccer Complex. Last Thursday, my family and I were attending our grandson's soccer game, and we left the field to go home, and we got to the parking lot, and my daughter's car had been vandalized. The driver's window and the passenger side window had been shattered, and taken from the middle of the van was a bag that had a lot of very personal stuff in it. The car behind my daughter was also vandalized. The passenger door window was shattered out of it, and they stole her belongings too. So I know there are bad people everywhere. And the sheriff's office is investigating, and I know they're doing everything they can do. Unfortunately, there's no leads because, believe it or not, nobody heard those windows being shattered. Nobody saw anything, or at least nobody's come forth to say they did. And unfortunately, there are no security cameras at that soccer complex that face the parking lot. There's one security camera, and it faces the comfort area or the bathroom. So the one area that maybe could be vandalized is monitored, but that entire parking lot where all those old people like me and those young people like my grandchildren and everywhere in between come and go. Okay. So thank you for this time. I just want y'all to be aware that there are no security devices at that beautiful complex. And my request would be that we consider spending the money and maybe putting security cameras in the parking lot, and that might deter other crimes from happening. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Payne. Next, we have Josh Falkenberry.
Thank you. My name is Josh Falkenberry. Actually live in Pageland, but I spend more time in Lancaster County with this uniform on than I ever do in Chesterfield County. So what I basically want to do tonight is just give y'all a little introduction to something. Saturday, we kicked off as your Lancaster County EMS Honor Guard EMS Week in South Carolina. We went down to Calhoun County and did the memorial. We assisted families and services in laying 10 bricks that memorialized those that have passed on serving this state through EMS. On Thursday, we went to Huntersville and did a funeral for a Charlotte Mecklenburg medic that passed away tragically on a scene. These are the things that y'all afford us to do. Y'all give us the leeway, y'all give us the equipment and everything to just go out and pay tribute to people that do this. The other thing y'all do for us is give us everything we need to protect the citizens of this county. We 24/7, 365, we're here, along with the gentleman right over here with the fire service and the gentleman with the sheriff's office. We all dedicate a whole lot of our time and efforts, as well as y'all do, to giving us the equipment and everything we need. So I just want to make sure y'all understood that we do appreciate what y'all do for us. We appreciate what y'all give us to be able to help the citizens, and look forward to hearing what you have to say tonight. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr.
John.
Falkenberry. Claire McNaughton-Hay.
My name is Claire McConaughey, 49080 Gladiola Street, Indian Land. Chairman and council members, I come to you with a great deal of sadness and concern. 2 meetings ago, I stood before you to show the support of 138 citizens in asking you to fully fund the sheriff's budget requests. In a perfect world, I would not be standing here again tonight. Why am I sad? Because at your last council meeting, after voting to spend over $2.3 million on a grant match for culverts, which was not a priority, some of which I found appear to be on dead-end roads, you then called Sheriff Fail and Director Player to this podium and asked them point blank to choose between their current staff or adding more people. In a Solomon's wisdom moment. I could see the shock on their face, and that moment should never be repeated. In the last few weeks, I learned that our firefighters make less than those in the city of Lancaster. But I was pleased that 4 of you voiced your concerns that public safety was not prioritized enough in this year's budget. In the last few weeks, our Indian Lane firefighters helped cover Station 19 in Charlotte during last week's tragic South Park inferno. And recently, our first responders faced the hold my beer moment of odd calls when a plane landed in the Catawba River. During the pandemic, we found that most of our essential county personnel were identified as law enforcement, fire, EMS, 911, emergency management, our wonderful coroner's office, and all of our first responders that work 24/7. We found out that we could live without a basketball court and a ball field during the pandemic, or a library book for a while as those departments shut down completely. But we couldn't live without our first responders. People still had 3 a.m. traffic accidents, fires still blazed, roads flooded at 2 in the morning, and people died of disease and old age on weekends and not between the hours of 9 and 5. Inmates still had to be taken care of, and drug deals were still made and overdoses continued. For years, our first responders have been told the county will catch you up to the neighboring counties, but we can't do it all at once. The additional fire station for Harrisburg Road, promised 5 years ago, is still not built and not in this year's budget. Studies you have paid for, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of studies, are still sitting on shelves gathering dust. When Sheriff Fail asked for 4 more deputies or Director Player asked for 4 more firefighters, it's because that's how many it takes to cover an additional position, one position when you're working 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. These have saved the county millions of dollars, these leaders, by using volunteers receiving fully funded grants and brought honor after honor to our county. How much longer will our first responders have to wait to be made whole? How many more highly trained individuals will we lose this year when they realize the county can find $2.3 million for culverts, but not a targeted raise of more than 6% across the board in this budget? In a perfect world, there would be no more delays or excuses, but in our imperfect world, it's time to prioritize our people, not culverts. Thank you, and God bless our first responders and their families.
All right, thank you. All right, Mark Howie.
Thank you very much. My name is Mark Howie, 112 Hallett Street, Fort Mill, South Carolina. I'll be very brief. I just wanted to come up here and kind of reintroduce myself. I know several of you and have known y'all for years, but Vice President of Community Development for York Electric Co-op. So we don't serve a tremendous amount of folks in Lancaster County, but in Indian Land we do. We've grown to about 7,000 accounts, and we'll try to help any way we can. I can assure you Mr. Carnes can get in touch with me if he needs me, but we're not a perfect utility company by any means, but we do try really hard, and if there's ever an issue, please contact me and we'll try to help you any way we can. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Mr. Howie. That concludes our citizens' comments. Let's move down to our consent agenda to have a motion.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I move to approve consent agenda items 6A, 6B, 6C, and 6D.
Second?
All right, I have a motion from Mr. Mostello, a second from Ms. McGriff. All in favor, raise your right hand. We have unanimous approval of our consent agenda. Let's move down to our non-consent agenda. 7A, award contract for independent audit services. Veronica Thompson, Ms. Thompson,
Yes.
go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, members of council, the current audit agreement ended with the fiscal year 2022, so now it's time to re-advertise the bids for the audit for the upcoming years. We solicited the bids beginning in March, and 2 proposals were received. One company was out of Georgia with a subcontractor out of Florida. This company was disqualified because they did not have a South Carolina license, so they weren't authorized to practice in South Carolina, which left Malden and Jenkins the only responsive bidder, and you all know that we've been with Malden and Jenkins for quite some time now. They specialize in governmental accounting. They're a large firm that can rotate the team, and they have been rotating for the past years. So beginning with the FY 2023, they're offering a price of $59,000. For FY 2024, $63,000, and for FY 2025, $67,500. Just to give you a bit of data analytics, we had 14 companies downloaded the RFP, but only 2 submitted a submission. Any questions?
What was last year's? What they charge us last year?
$49,900. So they have gone up.
And do you have any issues with them?
No issues.
This is the firm that usually works very well and very detailed.
Yes, and this is their this is their specialty. All of the team members are serve governments in the South Carolina and the Southeast 100% of the time.
That's why. So what do we need to do, Mr. Chair?
Mr. Chairman, I move to award the contract for independent audit services for fiscal year 2023 through 2025 with the option of an additional 2 years to Malden and Jenkins.
Second?
Motion from Mr. Carnes. Have a second from Ms. McGriff. Any discussion?
Why do we want to have an additional time? Is it 3 years plus 2 more?
It's optional.
Optional.
Optional under what conditions?
Under the conditions that they do what we requested in the scope of the project.
The last time we had this come before us, I expressed a concern that we continue to use the same CPA firm over and over and over. I've been at conferences and I've seen other CPA firms, talk to them about possibly doing our work for us. I told them obviously it would go out to bid. I didn't know we were going to do this. I might could have called a few to ask them to bid, but Finance 101 tells us that you don't keep using the same firm over and over and over and over. You have to change it up. And even though they've got people within the firm that they change up, they all work for the same set of partners in that organization. So they are loyal to their organization. And I'm personally going to vote against renewing a contract with Malden and Jenkins. It's just not good financial planning.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Ms. McGrail.
I understand your concern, but the fact of the matter is we only have a few firms in the state that's qualified to do county audit. If those companies that, whether you talk to them or not, they sent out the bid, only 2 responses. So where do we go from there? Do we just not have an audit? We got to go with who's knowledgeable with county finances. Maybe next year.
Well, it'd be 5 years from now that we will be using this firm probably. And what do? You build relationships. When you go to conferences, you ask questions and you meet people and you talk about problems that you might have in common. And so this is one problem I see that we have here in the county, that we're using the same firm over and over. This will be how many years running when this term's completed? 10 years that we will have used them?
First contract was awarded in 2014.
So 2014,
Well, if you-
23 is
if
9
somebody-
years plus 5 years is 14 years that we will have used them back to back.
Well, maybe this year, if you can get a hold of some of those people you talk to and encourage them to, when we put out the bid, to submit a proposal, that's all we can do.
Well, we're getting ready to vote on 3 years plus 2. We're not going to vote on 1 year.
But you know, you can always break a contract. That's what it's all about.
I don't know if you can or not. I hadn't seen the contract. I don't know.
All right, any more comments?
You said you had 20 people download the RFP,
14.
14.
And I don't know who they were. But 14.
Where do we go from here?
We have a motion for approval to accept this. So at this
for the
point,
question.
we'll vote on it and go from there. So we have a motion to award a contract for auditing for 23 through 25. All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed likewise. Our motion passes by a vote of 5 for and 1 opposed.
Mr. Chairman, I did want to see if we could revisit the public comment. Our practice has been since COVID that if we do get some comments by internet or email, that we do highlight those. There's a comment at your place that we didn't address tonight, basically saying that they're in support of higher salaries for first responders. So I want to make sure that we acknowledge that for the record and that you all have that at your desk.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Morstall. All right, let's move down to 7B, Resolution 1237-R 2023 regarding establishing the local sales tax credit factor. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion from Ms. McGriff, a second from Mr. Mostello. Mr. Morstall and Ms. Murphy.
Mr. Chairman and council members, this is the annual required work for all counties that have established a local option sales tax. Part of that requires from the state to do a credit factor. And so there are 31 counties out of the 46 that have done local option sales tax. And so the auditors calculated that it is the credit factor, which helps go back to reduce some of the sales tax, some of the property tax, is 0.000866 as determined by the auditor.
All right, thank you. Any discussions, questions?
How does that compare to previous year?
We'll let the auditor take that.
Last year, it was 0.000784, so it did go up this year.
And if you were to, if the taxpayer was to ask what's that impact on my property taxes, what would your answer be?
It depends on how much your property's appraised at.
Say it's $250,000.
Well, I don't know about that, Mr. Graham. I mean,
But, you know, but
all I
my
can tell
point
you
is,
is that
we
it
say
went
that.
up, so that's going to be more credit for the taxpayers this
Yeah,
year.
no, but it's easier if you give them a dollar number rather than a credit
Yeah,
tax.
I understand that, but everybody's different, and they get it off on vehicles and everything, so it's based on the appraised value of property.
Well, it doesn't make any sense to me, but that's all right. I understand the calculation, but it doesn't tell me how many dollars I'm going to save. I can calculate my own.
Y'all have any more questions? Thank you.
If you could have answered it, I'd give you an A+.
I'll look at yours tomorrow and give you a call. How about that?
All right, any more discussion? We have a motion to approve Resolution 1237-R 2023. All in favor, raise your right hand. We have unanimous approval.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Let's move down to 7C. We have a public hearing and third reading of ordinance 2023-1842 regarding authorization of a special source revenue credit agreement with Project Spider. Mr. Falk.
Thank you and good evening. This is the third reading of Project Spider. As you'll recall, during the first reading, Council had a concern about the number of job commitments in the document, and we changed that, amended that to be 125 jobs that they committed. They expect to be at 167, but 125 is their committed number. For those of you who don't recall, Project Spider is in the transportation industry. They're in North Carolina currently. They are looking for their U.S. headquarters and have decided that Lancaster is the location for their U.S. headquarters currently. Project Spider, as we now know, is Snyder Tire Incorporated. And the state of South Carolina has provided a large incentive package, about close to $9 million over a 20-year period. Lancaster is putting in place a agreement that basically allows them to pay normal ad valorem property taxes, but with a 30% special credit for 10 years. And we recommend recommend approval of this ordinance.
All right, any questions for Mr. Falk?
Our prior economic development director sort of had a chart so that we would be fair in how we did the credits and special source, and I'm in favor of this, but does this fit within the chart that he had created to make sure we're treating people similar?
It does. I've seen that chart, and it does.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we do have a public hearing scheduled for this. No one did sign up for the public hearing. So we will move past our public hearing, and I'm looking for a motion to bring this matter to the floor.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion for Mr. Blackman, a second for Mr. Graham.
Yeah, that'd be fine. He beat me.
Any discussion? We would just like to thank Economic Development for their work on this project. This is going in the Sharon View Credit Union building on Red Venture Drive. As y'all know, the office market in this environment today is not real good, and to fill that space, that's really wonderful news for Lancaster County. All right, so we're ready to vote on third read of ordinance 2023-1842. All in favor, raise your right hand. We have unanimous approval.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, this is Mr. Folk's first successful economic development. So I want to echo your sentiment to him and the entire economic development team and congratulate him on this project from the very beginning.
That was the first of many. All right, let's move down to public hearing and first reading of ordinance 2023-1848 regarding rezoning property located and adjacent to 8574 Charlotte Highway, Indian Land, from PDD 26 to regional business and from regional business to PDD 26. Applicant is Cross Ridge Development, LLC. Ms. Harden?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. The applicant is here in case there are any questions. I wanted to go over real quickly that the location is shown on the screen in the purple and the red polygons. The proposal was presented by the applicant after staff identified during some preliminary review that the property lines that are there now need to be readjusted in order to accommodate the proposed design for a future economic development project in this area. In order to do so, there needed to be some exchange of zoning areas between the regional business zone and the PDD zone. So you can see there on the screen, it's just off 521. The map that's shown on the screen also indicates which areas and the proposed zoning line adjustments. The areas that are in green are proposed to go from PDD 26 to RB, which is regional business. The areas in yellow are proposed to go the opposite direction, regional business into PDD 2016. And the net change is that the PDD 2016 area is reduced by about 17,000 square feet, which is an acceptable amount for a small change. For the context, this PDD 26, part of the Crossland development, has mixed use, has multifamily, has single family, and it has commercial uses as well. The district, in the 2016 UDO, all PDDs were declared legacy districts, and they cannot develop under the approved master plan, but may be substantially changed. Neither the PDD or Cross Ridge originally intended for the projects to develop as one, but in 2019, the two projects along Highway 521 were rezoned from MX to RB, or regional business, narrowing the scope of development. This will be the final step in realigning property lines and zoning boundaries to become consistent with the road alignment, which has been implemented on site. Again, to make it a little bit more clear with aerial photography from 2023, the area in the green is proposed to convert from PDD zoning to RB, and the area in yellow to propose to convert from RB to PDD. Staff recommended recommended approval at the Planning Commission public hearing. Planning Commission did hold a public hearing and discussion with staff, and at the end of the meeting, the Planning Commission recommended unanimously to approve approve the proposal.
Any questions from Ms. Hard?
No, they're just, but this is all internal property. It's not, none of it actually is on 521.
No, sir. This is, yes, sir, at least a block off of 521.
So
Yes.
when they take it out of the PDD and put it in the rural business, does that
Regional business.
regional business? There's a big difference.
Yes.
Does that mean that that regional business is then subject to the current UDO, whereas the PDD that was approved in 2008 may not be?
It changes the application, yes, sir. So the areas that convert to RB will be under the current UDO, under regional business, and abut areas that are already zoned regional business, so there won't be a big difference in the uses adjacent to those properties.
All right, any more questions for Ms. Harden? Thank you. We do have a public hearing scheduled for this. No one signed up, so we'll move past our public hearing, and I'm looking for a motion to bring this matter to the floor.
Motion to approve.
Second.
From Ms. Carnes, second from Ms. McGriff. Any discussion on this matter? Hearing none, I think we're ready to vote on first reading of ordinance 2023-1848. All in favor, raise your right hand. We have unanimous approval.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hart. Let's move down to first reading of ordinance 2023-1850 regarding amending the county code related to the position of the deputy county administrator. Do I have a motion to bring this to the floor?
Motion for approval.
Motion for Ms. McGriff to have a second to bring it.
Second.
Second for Mr. Graham. Mr. Marstall.
Mr. Chairman and council members, I bring this item to you as was highlighted tonight. We will be having a vacancy in the deputy or assistant county administrator position. I use both terms because the county code currently outlines the title of deputy county administrator. I put my information to council that I actually view the role of deputy different than the assistant county administrator, as we're currently structured along 5 divisions. A lot of our division leaders are department heads that have responsibility. Currently, the structure of this position is to have some line responsibility where they oversee parks and recreation, information technology, human resources, and risk management. And so knowing that that's kind of the structure that we're operating under, the deputy role to me is more without direct department oversight, but has more latitude for countywide initiatives and serve as a true number 2 behind the county administrator for succession planning. And so my proposal to you as we go out to hire for this position with the pending vacancy is to acknowledge in the code just simply a name change for assistant county administrator. And that way, I think it better reflects the structure I want to have or outlines or better communicates the role with some departmental responsibility for the position. So I'd ask for your support.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Ms. McGriff.
the deputy administrator and the assistant administrator, is this outlined currently in our organizational chart?
The position, yes, it's one position. In the code, it's deputy.
Position.
No, that's what I'm saying. It's currently listed in the code as deputy, one position.
So that means if we vote on this, the organization chart will change because it's going to be the deputy and the assistant.
No, we're just asking for a name change. So it's one position and only one position. And so the code just recognizes a deputy. The code does not recognize assistant. So I'm suggesting that we swap the name
Oh, I have no problem with
for
the
one
name
position.
change.
Yeah, for one position. So
But I do have a problem if you're saying down the road, within the near future, that because the two have different roles, that we're going to have a deputy and an assistant.
that's not the request tonight.
Okay, not tonight,
Not tonight.
but it's coming.
I don't know. I mean, down the road, certainly I think that's a structure. Again, there's a role in my mind for a deputy position that doesn't have line responsibility. There also is a role, I think, for the assistant position. But tonight's request is only for a name change, not an additional position. It's just to acknowledge in the code, to basically update the code to the current org chart structure that I'd like to have for this position.
As I said, I have no problem with the name change at this point.
So other than the name change, are you going to change any responsibilities? Or, I mean, I'm not quite getting at why we have a name change.
In most org charts for county structures or local government structures, when you have a deputy position, it's a true number 2 position where they don't have direct line responsibility for departments. They basically work with every department director across the organization, like the administrator, to help do different functions and guide those operations countywide. with the assistant position a little bit different, where it does have specific line departmental responsibility for a few departments. And so that's the structure that we have now based upon the 5 divisions that we have with Public Works, Development Services, Finance, and this one does General Services. And so I think it's a sufficient structure right now. I would just like to, and also I think the deputy position has a higher salary than an assistant position would have. And so I'm comfortable with the structure. I just think the name better reflects the structure of assistant, not deputy.
Yeah, but it doesn't sound like you're just changing the name, you're changing the responsibilities.
No, it's,
Reflect what is already.
yeah, to reflect the current role that I have for the position as it's been evolved.
Mr. Graham, I think I share your concern. I think in order to better understand this, it would be nice to see an organizational chart of what we're trying to do with this name change. So, and then the other question I would have is I'd like to see a job description for a deputy and a job description for an assistant in order to understand what the difference between the two is. I'm a little confused myself.
You know, to me, you can find the roles of either assistant or deputy, unless it's a standing description of what a deputy does opposed to assistant. But can't you define those roles in either positions?
So, yeah, they both have defined roles. It's more about supervision and overall organizational responsibilities. And so I think that delineates between the two positions.
So could we have an example of an organizational chart that shows what you're saying and then job descriptions to kind of explain the two? Because one day you might go down the road and ask for that deputy, and that's fine. I understand going forward there may be some needs there. But it sure would be nice to know now what those job descriptions would look like is what we're facing going forward.
And I say, I think as we talked about the job description, to me, the difference is supervisory responsibility and organizational breadth of interaction with all departments. For the deputy, the assistant is more tailored to some specific area, such as general services and a few departments. So I think that's the broad description in the job description, but the org chart would be administrator, deputy administrator, and everyone underneath that. Right now, we have it basically where the 5 division leaders, Public Works, Financial Services, Development Services, that's one of those 5. It's not the standalone, truly second in charge, oftentimes, on an org chart.
Well, I mean, again, if I just saw an org chart that sort of showed what you're trying to accomplish, I think I'd understand it better. Because again, if you're sitting here in the org chart and we have a deputy and or assistant, and then we have the division departments, what divisions and or departments, that shows the role of that number 2 person. So what I guess what I think I heard you say was the new person would only handle a couple of them instead of having the broad breadth of all of them. And that's why graphically I think it would really help us to see that with job descriptions and, of course, pay bands. So we get to bring the pay band down lower if the anticipation of pay is going to be lower. So that's what I'd like to see before I act on it.
In our previous assistant before John, you remember the organizational chart, that person wasn't listed there with any duties. You remember I brought that to council's attention. There was no duties listed for that. So I was concerned with that. So I mean, I don't know if that's where the 2 different titles come in, where she didn't have nobody, or they didn't have nobody under them, or what. But I was concerned about that then. But I mean, that might be what you're trying to get to where the assistant administrator is going to have different departments under them. Is that correct? They'll be over public safety, or whatever is going to be under them.
Yeah, right now, I mean, functionally, it is over general services for the assistant county administrator. That's how it's envisioned and practically how it's been operating. So trying to align where we are practically, functionally, with our division structure and having the assistant administrator basically be the general services director.
Right.
Any more comments?
We have a motion.
We have a motion from Ms. McGriff.
I'd like to make a motion to postpone this until we can get some more information.
All right, I have a motion from Mr. Blackman to postpone for how long?
I mean, I would think by the next meeting, they could give us 2 job descriptions and 2 organizational chart graphics. That wouldn't be too hard to complete, I wouldn't think.
Second.
I have a second from Mr. Graham. Any discussion on this motion? Let me make sure that we need to vote. Go ahead. I don't want to mess this up.
So as I understand the motion, we're not setting a definitive time. It's just until an event occurs. Is that correct?
He said next
I said
meeting.
next meeting.
The next meeting? Okay, well, then you will need a 2/3 vote for that to pass.
Okay, we'll vote on that first.
Yes, sir.
All right, everybody good with voting now? All right, we have a motion for Mr. Blackman. All in favor, raise your right hand. We have unanimous approval. We'll have that information at the next meeting, and we'll bring it back up. All right, thank you. All right, let's move down to first reading of ordinance 2023-1851 regarding amending county ordinance related to residency requirement for certain management positions. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve. Get it on the.
Motion from Ms. McGriff. Do I have a second to bring it to the floor?
I'll second to bring it to the floor.
All right, second from Mr. Carnes. Mr. Marstow.
Mr. Chairman, continuing on with that last conversation, as we were looking at the code and the organizational chart, the code does outline that the deputy or assistant county administrator position is one of 3 positions within the county that must live within the county borders within 6 months of accepting employment. And so the county administrator, the assistant or deputy administrator, and the economic development director are the 3 positions that are currently called out in the code to live within the county. Again, as we were going through thinking about the recruitment for the assistant or deputy position, I wanted to bring to council that attention that it was codified for a residency requirement, and actually ask for your consideration to eliminate or remove that requirement for residency as we're in this era of recruitment for positions. And as we go out, given that we're so tied to the Charlotte metro region, if there are candidates who are interested in working in one of these positions, just the economic development director or the deputy position, assistant position, that we not have the residency requirement because they may have family obligations just across the border, whether it be Charlotte, Mecklenburg, Union County, Fort Mill, York County. If they have family, spouse, work parameters, or if they have school, children issues, they may not be interested in making the move 5 miles across the border. But I still think, given that we do have department directors and division directors who do not have residency requirement for the workforce, I do think that it'd be valuable to make sure that we grow and attract as many folks as we can for the management positions within the organization. And so that was my rationale as we were going through the code to make some changes, is to eliminate just for the assistant deputy position and the economic development director position. So I ask for your consideration.
All right. Go ahead.
Let Alan go. You want?
Go ahead, Mr. Blackman.
Okay. All right. Well, you know, in my opinion, these are critical positions, and it's kind of hard to have a deputy or assistant administrator to be committed to a county they don't live in, especially economic development director. You live in Charlotte, you're the economic director for Lancaster. Where does your, I guess, what word am I looking for? Loyalty or priorities lie. That's the only thing, is that the commitment that it brings there. The only thing I could be satisfied with this piece is extending the time that they have to move into the county. because it may take them longer to get 6 months. If you got a child in school, you're going to want them to complete that year. That's the only part that I would be in favor of changing, but definitely not the residential requirements.
Anyone else like to comment?
I've had discussions with Mr. Marstall, and you know, I think I somewhat understand where he's coming from for counties that are surrounding us, but I definitely think if it's somebody outside the region, they need to have a residence requirement to get the job if they're outside the regional area.
Well, it comes down to a definition then of what's outside the regional area. Is the Charlotte metro regional area or what it is? I do understand the rationale for doing that, but I don't know how to do the geography to limit it that way.
I think we could probably just designate which counties that we would accept somebody coming from, and that would probably be ones that actually touch the county.
Yeah, you know, with today's real estate market, I would hate to lose someone that might come from York County or Kershaw County or Mecklenburg County. And, you know, with the current situation with interest rates and all going up, people that have a mortgage aren't wanting to move because the rates and all are a lot higher. And we do have department heads that come from surrounding counties, and I don't really have an issue with this.
I understand the department heads, but when you get to a top-level position like this, in my opinion, the second in command who could very easily step into the administrator's position. And when you're talking about economic development, you're talking about the workforce, you're talking about the jobs, you're talking about training, industry, who you're going to bring in. So, you know, that's just me. But
Well, I want to throw one little twist on this. I understand why the request is coming forward. I would like the deputy or the assistant to live in the county. The economic development director, I'm okay if he's in that surrounding area you guys are talking about. And I do think even with the deputy and the administrator having res requirements, we do need to make it longer than 6 months, maybe a year from employment. I mean, I'm flexible on that, but I just think we need to give a little more time. But and for the record, I would prefer everybody to be living in this county. But I know that's not realistic. But all the department heads and everybody in the organization, I would love to see living in this county, but I know that's not realistic. Thank you.
All right. Are there any proposed amendments to this ordinance? Or are you ready to vote on it?
you know, we
need to find a region.
Can we
can clean it up a little bit and make some of those offers, but I can't vote on it the way it is. But I do agree that deputy administrator definitely need to, because he could very easily be in the #1 spot. If you get sick, then he's going to need to be in that #1 spot, temporarily anyway. Maybe could live with the economic development person. I don't know. I have to think about that. But I do want that year to extend it to a year.
Could we, attorney, could we make independent amendments, depending on whether they pass or fail, make a second amendment so we can take these issues one at a time to refine this down to what's acceptable to the majority of this council?
So you certainly can, but in listening to your conversation, the last ordinance you just had, you're talking about concerns with changing deputy, assistant, et cetera, et cetera. This language here has got that deputy in at the moment, so as your attorney, I would say you might want to postpone this one until your next meeting as well. But we certainly, if you want to take it up, we can certainly do amendment by amendment if you would like.
Well, you know, whether it's an assistant administrator or a deputy, I think Ms. McGriff and I agree on that part, that person, no matter how they're titled, or if we have 2 people going forward, Both of those, in my opinion, would need to be in the county, but other than that, I don't mind the others being out.
Yeah, I'm going to make a motion to propose to link these two together and postpone them till that. But I would like to explore options on this regional thing. I'm not as hardline as my colleague here on the residency for the deputy administrator, because I think if you're just 3 or 4 miles outside the county, I don't have a problem with that. I'd have a problem with them if they're up in Huntersville or somewhere north where they can't get back and forth to county functions, because I think it's important that they be able to come to county functions after hours. So they have to live within a reasonable distance. So, and I don't know how to define that exactly. Whether we say that's 50 miles or 25 miles or whatever it is, I don't have a problem with that piece. But I would like to, I'm making a motion to postpone it and put it together with the
I second.
other one.
All right, we have a motion for Mr. Graham to defer this until the next meeting to go along with the other ordinance. And have a second for Mr. Mosteller.
And I would ask staff to research that train of thought I was thinking about.
Wait, so we can discuss this amendment? We got a motion?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just, Dennis, this is to help you. I'm not sure what clarity we just gave him. Because how is he going to know? Well, I guess he could bring the issue 25 miles, 50 miles, or the surrounding counties. We could vote on 25 miles, 50 miles, surrounding counties. That'd be 3 different choices we've got. How many positions? He'll have to bring that back to us, or we're going to vote on that individually.
We have a couple of options.
Well, we also have to establish, do they have to be so many miles from the county seat, or can it be the county line?
That's a good point, Brian.
That's why it needs to be in county. We can define that.
And I want to say that I thoroughly enjoyed John Bodner living in Indian Land and going through and using our recreation services. So he saw firsthand the same things I saw as a volunteer down in Heat Springs. So there is merit to having people living and using our county facilities.
Yeah, I'm especially thrilled that he saw the issues with traffic.
Yes.
And the current administrator, I believe, understands that very well, too.
All right, so council will be looking at several options, either mileage from the county line or surrounding counties, and the deputy or assistant administrator pulling that one out is a separate. I think that's what I'm hearing.
I think so. You're good with that. You're good. I'm good.
Yeah, that's pretty much on point.
All right, any more discussion on Mr. Graham's motion? It takes 2/3 to pass this motion. We ready to vote? All in favor, raise your right hand. We have unanimous approval to delay this till the next meeting. All right, let's get down to 7G, first reading of ordinance 2023-1849 regarding approval of the fiscal year 2023-24 budget. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion from Ms. McGriff,
I'll second it to get it on the floor.
second from Mr. Carnes. Mr. Marstall.
Mr. Chairman and council members, it's my pleasure to present to you the first reading for the county's fiscal year 24 budget. We'll ask Ms. Kim Bell to come forward. I did want to highlight, to walk through some of the presentation, I did want to highlight we did have the administrator's recommended budget on May 3rd. During that presentation, we did highlight a 0 millage increase budget, and we also provide an alternative budget that did outline a millage increase. I am pleased to say that we have done some more looking at the budget. We do have a new proposal and presentation for you. Ms. Belk will highlight that, but it does have a millage increase, but it is smaller than the alternate budget that we presented last time, but more importantly, this budget for the first reading, I believe, reflects the conversation that you had both on May 3rd, and then council again had a budget conversation on May 8th, where you did talk about your support and interest for public safety. You talked about compensation for employees. You talked about investments for technology and other things within the county, and that we have a robust program to address our growth. And so I do think this is a responsible budget that we have put together for your first reading tonight. And I'll ask Ms. Belk to go forward and outline some of the highlights for the budget. Ms. Belk?
Thank you. Mr. Chair, members of council, as Mr. Marstall stated, we did already do big chunks of this presentation at the May 3rd meeting and then followed it up at your last council meeting. So I'm going to try to get through and just highlight the changes that have occurred more than go back through some of that stuff that y'all have already heard. But it is all in this presentation just so that you have it all in one concise format. So overall, the budget is balanced with an overall 2.3 mil increase. As previously reported, the mill value is just over $480,000. The total budget is over $131.5 million. That is across all funds. The last time I was in front of you, there were still 6 funds that we hadn't completed, so I'll highlight those as we go through this just so that y'all see exactly what those funds entail. And that is with $7 million of growth in the general fund. Since our last meeting, there have been some changes with the personnel adjustments being proposed. Previously, there was a proposal for lump sum increases that kind of depended on your salary ranges. This version includes just a straight 6.5% across the board raise for all full-time employees. In addition, there is a recruitment retention pool for specific departments, which in the next few slides, we'll kind of go over in more detail exactly what that looks like. The bottom 3 items in that table did not change. It still includes the one-time payment of $250 for part-time, that health insurance increase, which I've highlighted before, and of course the Christmas pay. In addition, the budget as proposed at first reading includes funding for 6 new positions, including 2 deputies for the sheriff's office, 2 firefighters, the records and passport clerk, and a scheduler for Parks and Recreation. So the goals with the recruitment retention adjustment pool, which is at $330,000, are outlined on this slide. They include creating new competitive pay for fire rescue, providing an increase for frontline positions in the Clerk 1 and Clerk 2 or similar pay band positions, increases others to get to the minimum of their pay band or increase their hourly wage, recognizes growth impact and workload increases, especially where we did not end up recommending new positions. And then it also provides a little flexibility in administration to address compaction issues as they arise in the new year. So more specifically, I have listed on slides 7 through 9 those specific dollar amount impacts. Those do include wages and fringe. I'm not going to go through each one of them, but y'all do have them. So if you have any questions about any specific group, please feel free to look those over and let us know. In terms of our fees, I did just want to highlight, we presented at the May 3rd meeting a standardization of the recreation fee across all athletic programs at $75. Since then, we are proposing a change to that, pulling out the instructional sports, which are for younger age children, 3 to 5, which actually would set those at $60 instead of the $75, and that is an overall decrease of what they're currently at of about $10. I think we only specifically right now outline instructional soccer and t-ball, so this would allow us to provide that for any sport, so we'll just have one instructional sports and it'll be $60. In addition, Recreation has requested an increase to the tournament field rental fee of $100 to go to $350. The building fee did not change over what was presented previously. The coroner's office has requested an increase to their report fees of $50 each to help them recuperate some of their costs. Fire is also proposed to split out Van Wyck from Pleasant Valley and Indian Land. Currently in the fee schedule, that's just like a single fee for those fire districts, does not delineate between the three of them. This, as it stands tonight at first reading, Van Wyck would then remain at $90 and be listed separately, while Pleasant Valley and Indian Land will be listed together at $175 per ERU. The FOIA research time was presented at the last council meeting by our attorney. That one will have a separate schedule that will be posted on the website, and that's what the fee schedule outlines. But it will be based on the salary of the lowest paid employee in the department able to research that FOIA item. And then finally, impact fees. I forgot to present this at the May 3rd meeting. We do have to adjust those annually per the ordinance by that construction cost index. And so that for May 2022 to May 2023 was 2.2% average. So they all were adjusted upward by 2.2% in this first reading version. Just for some highlights.
Wait, while we're on the fees.
Yep.
Page 1 of 14 on the fee schedule presented to us in our agenda packet, 4.01. Mr. Harper, residential decks, the fee amount is $25 per square foot. Are you happy with that as a residential builder?
$25 per square foot.
That's the fee to pull a permit. If you build a 10 by 10, that's 100 square feet.
That'll be, we need to look at that.
$2,500, yes.
That's not,
That's beyond the pale.
We can get with Darren Robinson and see if that was meant.
yeah, because I just purchased 2 building permits, $2,500, and then 1,600 square foot houses,
Oh,
double garages,
and your deck, though, see, you better be glad you got it pulled now before it goes up on you.
and another $2,500.
That's right.
Yeah, you need to look at that.
Yeah, we will.
I think it's should be just $25. Is what they're probably looking at.
And that 2.2%, it doesn't seem to be real in today's world.
I got a question on the tournament field rental. To me, $350 is real cheap for those soccer fields that we just built, cost us multi-million dollars. And there's a lot of upkeep to those fields, lots of upkeep. And we're going to have to replace them after so many years. So I think maybe out-of-state teams, especially those that's going to come in here from North Carolina to use our fields, they should pay more than maybe our local people using them or something. But I think out-of-state people should pay more. You know, us having these expenses that we got to keep these out, they have to go in there and brush these things, and there's a lot of work to keeping these things up. They don't take one piece of chewing gum to mess up that turf. And so $350 just don't seem like a lot that somebody's going to go in there and do a big tournament and make a big ton off of it. And Lancaster County not getting no more than $350 off of it. It just don't seem.
That's per field per day, though, isn't it?
Yes.
So if you got 4 fields, they paying $1,400.
Is that per field?
Yeah, per field per day. And that's an increase from last year to recognize our new facilities.
Right.
So if you want us to look at something
per
different.
field, we okay. I thought they was renting a facility for that.
No, per field, yeah, per field.
Good, okay.
Have we did comparisons of surrounding areas, so we're going to be competitive with them?
We have, and actually, we're still a little low. There are other fields within the region that charge more, even $400 to $600 per field per day. So getting into this, we thought $100 fee increase would recognize the expense with a new field maintenance, but not start pricing this out so far as we're getting more and more into this to get our costs understood with the field maintenance. But yes, we still are low in the region.
Any other comments or questions, concerns on that?
Well, but to address Mr. Mostiller's issue, is there a different rate for out of county as opposed to in county?
We can explore that. I don't know what other jurisdictions may do or may not do. I'm trying to think if there are some other situations within our fee structure where we do that, and nothing comes to mind. So we can explore that. We'll get some research on that.
All right. So just some highlights to demonstrate the emphasis the budget has placed on public safety. In terms of pay adjustment, look to build on the career ladder approved last year for the Sheriff's Office with the 6.5% increase. We've worked to establish competitive pay for fire service. There is a part-time increase in EMS and in the coroner's office for their transport staff. 4 of the 6 positions being recommended are in public safety areas. Several large contractual increases to keep current operations functioning at the same levels are in public safety departments. For capital, we're investing in 15 replacement vehicles and generators for the sheriff's office, replacing the live scan fingerprinting equipment for the detention center. There's 2 replacement ambulances proposed in the capital improvement fund, and 2 QRVs for EMS, a brush truck for fire, extrication equipment and lifting struts, and the console replacement for 911. In addition, on the slide, there's some previously or currently underway ARPA projects which are tied to public safety as well.
Is the first responder pay enhancement what we did when ARPA first came out?
Yes.
That's it though, right?
Premium.
Thank you.
So moving away from the more generalized into the general fund, while overall there is a 2.3 mil increase proposed, there is a 4.3 mil increase in the general fund. That is being partially offset by the decrease in the debt service millage, which I'll go through later when I go into the debt fund. We did go back and decrease the building permit revenue about $300,000. As I previously reported, we were seeing a slowdown there, but because it hasn't occurred until the second half of the fiscal year, that's really volatile, and so it's kind of hard to tell if we should plan on that being more permanent or temporary. But at least adjusting downward somewhat should help us stabilize a little bit on our revenues projections, and we can monitor that in next fiscal year's budget. This largely didn't change. There was a flip-flop between intergovernmental was 7 and licenses and permit was 8%, but that flipped when I did the reduction in the building permit revenue to be 8% for intergovernmental and 7% for licenses and permits.
Kim, what about the interest income? You made a big adjustment, and we talked about that last time, and y'all were firm on your numbers last time, but now you're not.
Yeah, so that one,
Prior?
yeah, so as far as we know, that has increased, and we're not seeing that it's going to decline. I think we had taken in almost $1 million over last year, which was
900,000.
Yeah, it was 900,000 this year, but I can't remember. Last year was significantly lower. So I did set that budget up a little bit higher. It was at 450. I bumped it to 500. But again, I haven't heard anything that would make me think that that's any kind of fluke or anything like that. So I think for next year, it's supposed to remain relatively steady. I haven't heard anything to the contrary, but I don't want to jack that up and then the next year have to jack it back down, because that did hurt us. I think this year I had to really drop that down after the last 2 years.
Well, that was a pretty big change in interest.
Yes, it was. We did go back and put in some funding on fund balance for the RIA grant match that council accepted the grant last meeting for. Overall, that will need to be matched at, I think, 2.7 million was what was reported 2 weeks ago. So we programmed for next year $1,250,000 of that to come from fund balance. And so that brought the projected fund balance to be more around 50 million rather than 51, which is what was previously reported. All of the 6 positions I already covered, they are all within the general fund. So they'll all come from general fund revenue as well. Just wanted to highlight that. For the remainder of these slides, this is kind of where it starts with the information I've already previously covered. So if you guys have questions, you can stop me, but I'm mostly going to highlight what we changed since that prior discussion. All 3 of these items were previously in there, and we discussed them May 3rd, so I'll move on to operating funding. I did highlight in red on these slides what we changed. So one, as Veronica previously presented, we did get the bids back on the external auditor contract. We are looking to bump that line item about $5,000. I know their amount's going up about 10, but we have enough in that line item to cover at least 5,000 of that. Indirect assistance, there is a proposed 6% across the board increase for employees in the solicitor and public defender's offices. That totaled about $117,000.
Kim, I do have a question there.
Yes, ma'am.
Why did we do all employees at 6.5 and the solicitor and defender's office at 6?
So we were still assessing the carry forward. I know Chairman Harper had asked for that. The carry forward funds from previous years, as well as the state support for those new positions and potentially raises. So as of now, it's at 6, not 6.5 like the others.
But part of that is to say there is a carry forward amount that would be sufficient to bump it to 6.5%. Again, just ongoing conversation with the solicitor when we don't know the full state amount right now. Okay. But the carry forward amount should be sufficient for him to also have the 6.5% increase.
That's what I was wondering, what was going to make up that.
It's just about information's not quite finalized, and so that's where we are still working on. But they will have money carry forward to raise it if you go forward with a 6.5% increase for all employees.
Can they do the career ladder, like take that 116,000 and?
Yeah, they can use carry forward. They can use carry forward money for that. So yeah, even if they basically get a lump sum as direct assistance. Right. So yes, the solicitor can take that amount, add to some of the carry forward, and make some different adjustments based upon his career ladder. So it could be that incoming attorney can have a higher starting salary, and someone who's been there for 3 or 4 years can have maybe a little bit of adjustment too. So it does allow the solicitor to have some flexibility with his career ladder based upon the budget money as well as carry forward money, basically what's left from this year.
I know the starting salary is just like a lot of our other departments. That's where it's hurting them at, is getting, it's not an attractive salary to get somebody to come out of law school to come here and work. So.
Now that will be coming from the state to adjust those salaries, right?
For certain positions, so the state, that's again part of the question, is how many positions the state is going to provide new. As of now, we understand it's 4, and they have pegged a salary for those positions. So based upon that, that will have the solicitor determine what the starting salary needs to be for other ones that he brings in as well.
Now, will the state have that information to the solicitor by the end of this budget year?
Yeah, hopefully they'll have it within the month.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions on that? All right. There was no changes on this. This was as previously presented. Same thing here. The big, again, just to highlight what on the non-recurring funding, the big addition was the RIA grant match at $1.25 million. coming from fund balance. Also, this item was presented to y'all, the access control finalization for the administration building. They did get some more cost information back on that, so, and based on that information, they requested that it increase in cost about $14,000 to $43,000. So that's the new proposed amount, and the budget has been updated to reflect that. The project itself did not change, just the projected cost. We added the roads inventory to the list of fund balance projects. That has not been updated since 2010. This will allow the county to leverage technology to properly inventory county-maintained roads, and will hopefully open up the doors for more user-friendly access to that data with GIS and other capabilities for staff as well as the public. And in order to add that, Recreation had requested to swap out, previously we discussed with y'all, gym floor replacements at Buford and AJ. They had 3 projects that they prioritized higher, including Walnut Creek upgrades mostly in the bathroom, installation of 6 electronic scoreboards at Buford, and field lighting at Indian Land Recreation Center. And then by swapping out that gym floor for these 3, we still had that balance where we were able to fit the roads inventory back in. So it didn't actually change the bottom line with that fund balance proposal. It just swapped some items in and out.
Why do we need 6 scoreboards at Buford when the ones in the East Springs field, as we heard about earlier, have never been used?
I've not heard that about not being used.
Matter of fact, somebody made a comment to me this last week. We walked across the soccer field and said, "Nice signs. When are we going to use them?" And I said, "I hadn't thought about that."
These in the gym or these on the field?
The soccer fields. But those scoreboards have never been used. So I'm asking, why would Buford want scoreboards if we're not using the ones we've got in East Springs?
Well, these are for the ball,
School- yeah.
baseball, and softballs.
These are outdoor.
But we got soccer.
Yeah, these are outdoor. These are Buford outdoor. I think these are outdoor ones, aren't they, at Buford?
Yes, they're electronic.
Yeah.
They're outdoors. And East Springs light scoreboards are outdoors, and they've never been used. Somebody else also pointed out to me, you build a nice concession stand in East Springs at the park there. It's never been used. A food truck comes in or food trailer comes in and parks and vendors out of that. We've never used we build this building and we don't even use it. So that's why I'm wondering why we would put up more scoreboards if we're not even using the ones we've got. That's all I'm asking.
I mean, Buford will be used because I've had a lot of comments, people asking about those. It's on a ball field. And a soccer field, I'm honest with you, all the years that I was coach soccer and stuff, the referee kept score and never had scoreboards. But baseball and softball and different sports like that, it seemed to tendency scoreboards follow those type of things.
Well, Mr. Blackman, I'm curious why we're taking out the Indian Land recreational field lighting when there's a chronic need for that in the Indian Land area.
But that's added back. That's in.
It's in, okay.
The red is in is changed. The
It's
red
in?
is in and changed.
All right, good.
But no, we will get back to you because I think, Mr. Blackman, if the scoreboards aren't at the Heath Springs, they will be.
Oh, they are there. But
Okay,
they're
so
not being used.
let's
That's my
follow up
point.
on that. I got you.
In these rec games, where else do we have scoreboards that are being used for youth recreational sports? Yeah, I mean, my thing is, I just hate wasteful government spending. And if we've built stuff that we're not going to use, and we're going to continue to build more things that we're not going to use, that bothers me.
Other funds, as I stated earlier, I will highlight again the ones that changed since May 3rd, but I'm going to start with the 6 funds that did not get presented to y'all in the last presentations. Starting with debt service, just to highlight this one, the proposed millage for that was certified by our county auditor's office, and she has recommended that to decrease from 9.6 to 6.9, which is helping to offset some of the other millage increases in the budget. Capital project sales.
Jim, would you explain that last one to us? Go through the numbers. What is revenue? What does that really mean?
So debt service millage is set separately from our operating millage. We don't have any limitations on that outside of what we've issued, obviously. So my understanding is based on between what we had available to us in the bank with our upcoming debt payments next year, the auditor felt comfortable lowering that millage rate down.
So, but revenue, is that revenue that's coming from our property tax assessments? And then we're going to spend the $4.5 million. Where are the other financing sources? What does that mean?
Currently, I have that coming from reserve, and again, that would be due to the what we have in reserve being available. So we didn't need to maintain that higher millage in order to cover the payments.
Is reserve the same thing as fund balance?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think that there's some stuff that's supposed to roll off after next year on the debt. So it'll be our last year's payments.
So the revenues to highlight that what the millage generates based upon our debt payments that we currently have. And I think this is the key point for citizens to understand why this goes up and down is because we've taken on debt for past projects within the county, but as it rolls off, it's paid off, then we don't need as much revenue, but there is ability to have that other financing source, which is some debt fund balance within that fund, within that millage. And so that's how we're able to keep a little bit more even instead of the peaks and valleys, because this is where I don't want to get caught. Next year, as we maybe take on some more debt, it may go back up again next year because we'll have some new debt payments versus what might roll off next year.
So, but if we take on new debt, then that millage is going to go up.
Correct.
So we're kind of playing a little shell game here, moving things around or not. I mean, that's you got a decrease here, but we might issue bonds and it'll go up. But our millage without that is going up. How much is it? 4.3 or something, or 5.3 without the debt service?
Without the debt, you're at 5 mils.
So yeah, that's why I wanted to highlight it, because we don't want to be on this roller coaster of up and down. So we're able to smooth the debt service fund a little bit. But in reality, I don't want anyone to think that this may stay at this level. It depends upon what we do for debt and new projects and things going forward. It will have an impact on the debt millage next year and future fiscal years.
Yeah.
But are we not playing a shell game? Because if we have $4.5 million in debt that we've got to pay, why would the millage not have covered it up there in the revenue source? Because it appears to me that it's a kind of a backdoor way of taking money out of the citizens' property taxes to pay the debt, because you're either going to get millage over here in the general fund or you're going to get millage over here in the debt service. So why would you not have revenue matching expenditures and not having to pull out of reserve or fund balances, government of county calls it? I just don't understand that, why you would do that.
So, if you've been charging a certain millage for certain projects and certain debt payments, and you do have enough in the reserve, fund balance, bank, whatever, to cover the final payments on something, you wouldn't keep the millage at the same rate. And I don't want to speak for the auditor's office because they're the ones that certify this. So Suzette, if you want to come, you can, okay. So that is something that the auditor's office does certify to us. And as I was saying, if we've already been charging millage for it and there is millage of additional funds available from charging that millage rate, then you wouldn't necessarily keep it the same when the debt's going to be rolling off if you could make those final payments. Any questions for me or Suzette?
I'm good. I'm good now. I just don't understand what it is.
Jerry, if we know our expenditures for this coming year is going to be 4.5, why would our millage not match what it takes to pay 4.5? So therefore, we would have 4.5 in the revenue versus 3.8. That's what bothers me.
So you wanted the revenue to balance out with the expenditures, that's what you're saying?
Without depending on the millage that's collected over here in the general fund.
Well, I think as Ms. Belk said, that because there is money, whether things roll off the final payment isn't always consistent with prior year payments. If there's money that's in the debt service fund, you don't want to keep charging the same millage if you don't have the same expense. And so it does get us a little bridge through the fund balance.
But we know our expenditure is going to be 4.5, whether there's a final payment or not, coming in this coming year. We ought to be able to amortize debt. And so we know what we've got to pay for our debt service for the year, and that's 4.5, obviously. Why would the millage not be set at a rate to match the revenue? Because are we not disguising what we're really spending in debt by taking it from fund balance, which came from excess general fund millage?
It's not from excess general fund. So this is it is not from excess general fund. It is from previous years of debt service millage. This is kept separate from general fund.
So we're carrying a surplus, again, or fund balance in this own little fund here.
Yes, it is its own separate millage, own separate fund, and it is to be kept separate from the general fund and operating.
And I guess it's got to have the same percentage then, the same 30% or whatever. But it has the same basis,
I won't say that this one, I can't say for sure that this one completely follows that policy because sometimes it depends on when the payments are getting made and when we issue the debt. And so there may be times when there's more or less than that, but do you want to speak on the carry forward?
We had a figure that comes from the treasurer's office that we have a carryover balance. And it was $1,644,000 that we added, took off the debt service, the $4,953,000. I got $4,953,000 on here,
So we're going to carry over $1 million some odd dollars into the next fiscal year. And we're going to, I guess, of that amount, take $698 to help pay this expenditure.
Correct.
So we charge debt service millage to our citizens at an amount that created a surplus in past years.
You also do, to a point, need surplus with debt service because some of the payments are due in September before tax bills are issued. So you need to have enough carry forward year to year to cover the September payments before the tax bills are issued. With this debt rolling off, you won't need that amount left in the bank for FY25 because you would not be making that payment for that one in September of 2024.
Is that clear to you?
Yeah, it's not clear to you?
Well, I just think if we borrow money, then we're going to put on debt and millage, and we never talk about that when we talk about issuing a bond.
Because it's set aside. We do talk about that when we always talk about our debt services fund.
I know we talk about it, but we don't talk about the effect it has on millage.
See, if I know in September that I got to pay so much money, and I know I got to work hard in January, and I can't work any more the rest of the year, I'm gonna work hard and save enough money to pay that September bill, and that's what I'm getting at, trying to simplify this debt service millage, so that it's a more accurate indicator of what our citizens are actually paying for, or what we're paying for on behalf of our citizens.
You know, that's a total other meeting. We will not get that settled right now.
I agree, we won't.
We won't get to sell it, but it just,
Kick that can down the road.
it's raised some questions.
That needs to be a council of the whole explanation. Let's find out and have a discussion. This is not the time.
All right.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Capital Project Sales Tax 2 Fund, we do still have a couple of outstanding items that were previously approved, including funding for the Lindsay Pettis Greenway and $1 million for the USCL pedestrian plan. Those have not been expended yet, so until those are, we will be showing them in this fund. I believe that was approved under the proviso that council previously approved. For Capital Project Sales Tax 3, that's being proposed at $15 million, with most of that funding going to fund balance for now. This is pending council's decision on that debt for the detention center, so depending on when that first payment is going to be due, how much that amount will be, we can come back at a later time this way and maybe ask for a resolution just to transfer funds around to get started on some of those other projects. But until we know what that schedule and that payment's going to look like, for now, most of this is just going to go into fund balance as programmed.
What are the expenditures covering?
Yeah. So under the expenditures right now, those were carried forward from this year. That's for roads. I can't remember if that was proviso or just the top of the priority list in terms of our projects that were funded. So potentially, again, those ones can get cut loose, but Veronica's not going to give permission to do that till we know what those debt service payments are going to look like and when they're going to.
Yeah, so that's something that rolled over from capital sales tax too, right? Is that what you're saying?
I think that this was in 3, so this was planned in 3. Planned to be spent out of 3. I think it's the number 2 priority project though after the detention center.
Yeah, that's why I was asking. I thought the detention center, we had to fund whatever we had committed to the detention center first before we started on the next projects.
Yeah, so, and my understanding is it'll depend on that debt schedule, and then we can start, once we have that schedule, we'll know better about the schedule for these other projects. Roads was just programmed this year, so I went ahead and carried it forward since it is the number 2. But again, we won't let that one go until we know for sure we'll be able to make those initial debt payments. All right. Van White Fire District, I did want to highlight, did actually originally request a full-time position, but the revenue projections from the assessor's office did not meet the revenue that they would have needed to be able to fund that position. So we worked with the board on that, and they submitted us an amended budget that focused on operating and capital needs only. And the largest item that's in that budget, as highlighted, is $54,000 for roof replacement and ceiling floors. The rest of it is just equipment, utilities, supplies, that sort of thing.
They didn't suggest an increase on the rooftop fees to cover their,
No,
okay.
not at this time. As previously stated, it is proposed that the fee amount increase for Indian Land Fire District and Pleasant Valley to $175 per equivalent residential unit, or ERU, as I said earlier. Due to the merger discussions, this budget is currently proposed at just 3 months, with the plan being that a merger would take place by September. Once council makes a decision on the merger, depending on whatever direction that goes in, I can bring an amendment back to this budget to show a merged fund. But for now, as it's outlined in this, it's significantly shrunk because of that potential merger happening.
And I do want to highlight, same thing with Pleasant Valley, although the 175 number is there, that is clearly a number that you all have to decide. That is placeholder within the fee structure. The budget from Indian Land and Pleasant Valley ramps up staffing, has a considerable higher expenditure based upon some countywide. We recommended earlier doing a pay increase for fire positions, and then the fact that they want to move to a 3-shift, 24/7 operation, that significantly would increase their budget for their staffing model. And so depending upon how you look at the ERUs, you can adjust ERUs if you don't want to go so high as 175. But again, we've been trying to steer the conversation to their proposed budget. And their proposed budget does have a full staffing model for both Indian Land and Pleasant Valley. And the chiefs are here from both those departments, but we've presented before what their proposed budget would look like combined for a full year. And so how you all want to, where your comfort level is with the 175 will be part of the conversation.
So we can adjust that 175 to get to it to a different way, maybe.
Yeah, I would say, yes, keeping in context what the fee boards have proposed as the budget for what they think the operating expenses are going to be based upon the service level they want to provide within that area. So if you want to meet the fee board request of their operating budget, that would require about $175 rooftop fee ERU. If you want to do something lower, then we would adjust their budget accordingly, but we're giving you what's been requested for their operating budget.
And if we don't approve that 175, things will be taken off of the list of services or items that we can produce.
This is only contained to Indian Land and Pleasant Valley.
Yeah, that's what I'm
So
saying.
if you don't do it at that level, they will have to restructure their budget and may not be able to do their staffing implementation for 24/7 coverage across 3 shifts, or they would change their operating, how they look at part-time use, other things. But also keep in mind that they would also fall under a new increased pay structure for fire that we're proposing for our fire, rescue, emergency management positions as well. So there's parity among these fire departments as well as the overall countywide fire service.
And I'm assuming millage would not be a discussion for this budget.
Not at this time. We've not been able to evaluate that yet to give you options on that yet, but that will be part of the ongoing conversation over the next year as we've talked about before.
The 175, does that also include an increase in ERUs for commercial, or are we still talking about having commercial the same?
That would be the commercial the same at the 2,500 ERU, and so 175 does not adjust ERU. My thought on that is that for the fee payers in the district, if you change ERU, change the rate, it may be a little complicated or convoluted to understand what's going on, but then if we're going to have another conversation about millage and the rate, I'm trying to keep things as stable as we can, yet adjust the need for service delivery changes within those 2 fire districts.
So do we have a plan in place to make sure we're on millage next year?
We're a what?
That we're on millage next year instead of doing the fee?
That will be on council's agenda going forward for you to have that conversation within the next year. So yeah, we haven't had that conversation yet. What it looks like if you're talking about countywide, within the district, there are a couple different options within the millage conversation. And so yeah, that is definitely on the schedule.
Well, right now, I'm just pertaining to this because, if we go up to 175, I want that to be a one-year thing, and we go to millage at that point in time. So it's a better process overall for all the taxpayers because, if you've got a $500,000 house or $1 million house, you need to pay more of the tax fee than somebody that's got a $40,000 trailer.
Yeah, I don't want to get stuck with the 175 plus millage.
And again, yes, so come next year when you have the millage conversation, it may be that you want a millage to support so much of the operations and still maintain some level of a fee, so that would be part of the conversation. If you want to be all millage, there's a lot of options that we need to explore with council. And so, one, the first question is the merger. We want to get through that for September. 2 will then be the full conversation about fire service countywide and how that will impact those 2 districts, and even Van Wyck is part of the consideration too. And so that will be the conversation after you resolve the merger question.
Well, and we also definitely need to have a heart-to-heart conversation about the commercial ERU because, you know, we don't need to be dumping all the cost of the fire service onto the residents when commercial drives a lot of the need of having some of the equipment that we have.
I do just want to highlight that the fee schedule itself does not set that ERU. That is set, I think, in the ordinance to establish this district. So if you're looking for that.
Yeah, we'd have to
So
amend
we
the
can't-
ordinance.
We really can't do that then for this budget because it would require an ordinance, which was 3 readings.
So that's the part that, why I only did the 3-month budget is because that information is supposed to be coming back to y'all separately.
So that'd be part of the merger conversation. Again, that's why we're looking at 3 months here for y'all to make this decision within the next 3 months. But that's where we'll change the ordinances, everything related to those 2 districts. And that will address fee structure again or ERU structure.
Okay, don't we have to have a permanent structure decided before tax bills go out?
Right, and that will allow us to do it for the tax bills to go. If we are on track, we'll have our schedule by September 1 for merger being official. That will allow the assessor.
Auditor's got her hand up back there.
There is no way that can be put on bills come September. Our bills are made up for real estate, probably around in August. So there's no way that we can get that 175 on those bills for September.
Well, we should be able to if we pass it in this year's budget.
Right, if it's a part of the budget adoption, which is July or June 26th.
Brad have had this discussion as well, the assessors. And it's going to be hard for him to code all these rooftops the way it is now. So, yeah, y'all need to discuss this with me and with Brad and all to see if this can be doable for this budget year. Because right now, it's going to be tight.
But if we know,
Unless we get an extension.
if we know the rooftop fee, whatever it may be, with 3rd reading at the end of June, that should give you time frame to put those in the tax bill?
The only thing is if you do a merged fee, I don't know if they'd have to recode for that. That would be. So if it's merged, this will set it separately at 175. If it's merged. I don't know if that changes their billing software.
Well, you know, even if we merge the apartment budgets, if we have to pass the fees separately, can that not work? Because, you know, they're going to be at the same fee in both ones, so it's not like we're putting something different on different sections of the panhandle.
We would just have to talk with the software company and ask, what is the latest, I guess, that y'all could tell us what those new fees would be, and then for the tax bills to go out on time.
Right. Well, I think we need to jump on that and make sure that's going to happen because we've had a lot of discussion around this, and this is the first we're hearing that there's a gnat in the ointment. So.
Yeah, we'll work on timeline with that.
I did also, just to make sure that it's clear, want to highlight that Mr. Marstall talked about they have proposed budget plans for that 175 potentially. This 380 and 350 for them is just a continuation budget until that merger happens. So it's not accounting for all the new positions that they had proposed. That would be part of that merged budget that we'd have to come back and do an amendment.
And what was the reason we did not consider this for the Van Wyck Fire District in order to track easier? We've talked a number of times about trying to keep the fees even within the fee districts.
Well, I'd say primarily because the fee board didn't request it. They did present a budget, but with that, they didn't request council to consider a new rooftop fee.
Well, they probably presented the budget because they were under the impression they had to operate under what they had.
Well, I've had some discussions with been like residents about that. I hadn't run into too many people that are enthusiastic about increasing their rooftop fee.
I'm sure not any of the homeowners are going to be enthusiastic about it, but you know, we've got to be able to provide the level of service that people have become accustomed to, or we'll be hearing a lot more about that than the actual fee raising.
Yeah, well, they're not as under so much pressure because they don't have the big developments that Indian Land and Pleasant Valley has. But the fees, oh no, you could end up with. Well, we'll have to. This is really not a budget discussion. This is about the fire service overall.
Any other comments or questions on the 175 or the two fee districts? I did just want to highlight the airport fund changed slightly to accommodate the changes to the proposed pay adjustments with that recruitment retention pool. The capital fund, oh, there's a slide missing.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened, that's okay. The capital improvement fund did not change. It still includes a $500,000 increase here, and it funds these items which were covered at the previous meeting as well. And just to highlight, there are 10 sheriff's vehicles proposed in this fund, but there's an additional 5 proposed out of the general fund, which is where that 15 total is that I presented earlier coming from. Court Security Fund also changed slightly to accommodate the proposed pay adjustments at the 6.5%. So that did result in a slight millage increase of 0.2 mils, which is how we're coming up with the 5 mil total increase with the debt offset. Victims Advocate Fund had no changes, and neither did any of these 911 fund, hospitality fund, stormwater didn't change. Other than for the pay adjustments that were made. CTC did not change, local accommodations tax did not change, nor state. And so just to kind of wrap this up so we can open it up for discussion amongst council, the budget is balanced with a total millage impact of 2.3 mil increase. That's a $7 million in the general fund. It includes 6 new positions, 0.5% across the board raise for employees, and looks to accomplish the goals listed there on the bottom of your slide. And then I have provided a table on this slide with just the historic millage rates, again showing that 2.3 mil increase from the prior year. And with that,
Kim, can you tell us the impact on our property tax? Let's say my house is valued at $250,000. What would be the impact of my property tax?
It's $23 on 6% property that we've got it figured, and that's without not taking into consideration the local options and the residential credit. So on 6%, it's like $23.
Okay, thank you.
When do we have our next reassessment year?
What?
Reassessment.
25.
Was it done in 22?
So that was
5 years, a year late?
Yeah, because we delayed. I think it was done in was it done in 2020, and then we delayed implementation because of COVID a year. So I think it's supposed to actually take place for the assessor's office in 24, but it'll go on the tax bills in 25.
Are we ready for discussion?
Mr. Chairman, could we have about a 10-minute break before because I think we're going to be here a while.
We will be
5 after 8.
Thank you.
All right, I'd like to call this meeting back to order of the Lancaster County Council. You've heard from Ms. Belk, and I know there's a lot of different trains of thought, and, any financial decisions that the council makes will have an impact on the budget one way or the other. And so remember, this is just a first reading. If council feels that we need a workshop before our next meeting, if you want to request additional information from staff, because I know there's going to be some questions about compensation and what other agencies or departments are paying. Is that a feedback on me? What about now? I'm sorry. That better? All right, thank you. So with that said, do you have anything before we get started?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman, just welcome feedback and input on the proposed budget tonight.
All right, Ms. McGriff.
Going first?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
Ladies first.
Well,
Gentlemen here.
Thank you so much, Alan. You are so kind.
Thank you.
But, I've listened to the budget proposals. Some things I agree with, some things I don't. But I think right now, we know where our focus are. We know where our needs are. And we know that in this county, we want a safe county. We know that up front. I'm in support of the 6.5 salary increase across the board, taking the sheriff department out of that 6.6, and recommending that the sheriff get a 10% raise so he can be competitive with all the others. Because I feel if we don't do it this year, next year we're going to get ourselves deeper and deeper into this. So we may as well try to handle it now while we can, because I guess my question is, if we do that, how much of a meal increase would it be? Separating the sheriff from all other employees, 6.5, and he gets 10%. And that will bring him as close to where he needs to be. So next year, he won't be deeper in the hole.
And we'll have to run those numbers based upon the number of, and so when you talk about sheriff's office, are you talking about sworn officers, those who have badges and guns? You're talking about across the board?
Let's get a clear definition of his employees, whether that will include sworn officers, detention center workers, and so forth.
I would suggest it be sworn officers and detention officers.
Okay.
We'll run numbers based on the number of people in those positions and slots to come back and what that raise is and then what that mill impact would be. So sworn and detention. Okay.
And Sheriff, so the ones that work for you that are not sworn, they would follow the guidelines of the rest of the employees of the county?
6.5.
Okay.
And do we have comparisons on York County, SLED? We've got all that.
We do. There's some information I think the sheriff's provided, and then we have some HR information as well that was in Friday's information. So we'll put those back together.
Yeah,
And I did see those comparisons in there, but, I think this will put us in a competitive position.
Also, too, as we consider, because, I want to talk about fire service, too, and I want to talk about EMS, and I want to talk about the coroner's office. But one thing we got to remember is, and the 10% for the sheriff's office, hopefully is going to keep him competitive. It's not going to take him to the top. But these other agencies are going to go up also, that we're doing a static comparison right now. And I'm good with what you said, Mr. Griff. I think that's a reasonable amount. But we got to understand his competition, just as EMS has, just as fire has. I've done extensive work on the fire, as I told y'all, and that's going to do a good service for our people. The minute these other surrounding districts give their money, we're still going to be under them, but at least it won't be to the degree it is right now. So I want to look at getting the fire service $280,000 additional, well, not additional, that would be their total pay increase. I have a spreadsheet by employee, or at least employee ID. I don't have employee names because, you've always said you never want to see names, and I really don't want this to be personal to anybody. But I believe they need $280 to make themselves
And this is the fire service?
that would be and I'm kind of confused on terminology, but emergency management, whatever you want to call them, that whole group, there's about 54 employees there. And that actually is going to cost us 14% to make that happen, but it's not giving them any real competitive, again, as a sheriff, he's not going to be over the top, neither will fire. They're not going to be over the top. And then EMS, I still hadn't quite got a good handle on them. But I'm sure 220, 240.
I do not have a problem with that, Alan. I think it's a good number. It's probably, what's the meal value?
480.
Little over half of a meal.
Let
We
me.
need the other half for EMS. And then I'd also, if y'all don't mind, out of courtesy, I'd like for the coroner to come up. She and I had a conversation a month ago about, I don't even know why we were talking to start with, but it was the weekend or right after the weekend, and she was telling me about the weekend work. And if y'all don't mind, I'd like to call the coroner up and let her discuss her weekend schedules.
Chair, that's left up to this man right here.
Thank you. So our business is not Monday through Friday, and neither is the office part of our business either anymore. DHEC has changed some of their regulations. We have to have some paperwork out in 48 hours because of the influx of the people that have moved in who are out of state. We have to do that paperwork all weekend. So if you die on a Thursday, your family flies in on Friday, they want you cremated and you to fly back with them. All that has to be done on the weekend. And either myself or my chief deputy does it. I take 75% of it because I want them to have a break. And we all still run shifts. We have a strategic meeting in the morning at 9 o'clock, but I don't get off shift until 8 o'clock in the morning. So we're pretty strapped for help. My only request was to move my last part-time person up to full-time. That makes us then equipped to run in pairs of 2, just like most other agencies have 2 that respond. And that would put us where we need to be, running in pairs of 2.
And what was that total amount, Carla?
28,000.
28,000 to bring him on up, I think so, yeah. Versus the other would have been a vehicle for a new person and a salary for a new person. It would have been over 100,000. I think it was around 28 to 30 to bring him up to full time. And he already has a vehicle, so all that's already taken care of.
That sounds very reasonable to me.
That brings us up to 318 with your
I still don't
firefighter.
think she's overstaffed by any means.
I appreciate her trying to figure out how to do it with not an extra person. I mean, that tells me that you are truly looking at the taxpayers' dollars.
I am, so far, until I get tired. Just an example for you. Tonight, Jennifer and I both, she's there waiting on a family to come from Greenville. I'm leaving here to go meet a family from Isle of Palms, because what I'm not going to do is tell somebody they can't see their loved one. I don't care if it's 8 o'clock at night or 2 in the morning. I'll stay there and wait on them and let them get that last view of them.
Well, you need to be employee of the week, the year, and the month.
Carla, I don't think it's addressed in this current budget. You've never given me a tour of your facilities, by the way, but Kershaw County did. David West gave me a tour of his facilities and his cold storage. But when funeral homes leave a body too long, whether they're trying to collect their money from the families or whatever, how does that, are we okay with the storage? Well, I know we're doing your building addition for you too. Are you going to be okay with cold storage? Do we need to, these people that don't get these bodies in and out, I think we might need to be charging a per day fee for the Holiday Inn morgue.
Agreed.
And
Yes.
you know, and yet I would say give you full power to waive that fee if it's a good funeral home that just made a mistake or just had one family that caused a problem. But if you've got one that's like they have, that's causing you to have to take up your freezer space, they need to pay for it, and we need to incentivize them to get those bodies.
Right, and we have some, most of the time when a funeral home does ask to store, it's while a family is waiting or to come sign the paperwork for cremation, something of that matter. It's only a couple of days. Our cases that come in from scenes, sometimes families aren't prepared. They don't know who they're going to use. That's a hold for us. But we have some funeral homes that use us as a convenience, as you said, the Holiday Inn, because they don't have cold storage, so we're kind of getting it dumped on us. There are plenty of exceptions. Arlington Cemetery buries twice a year, right? And so sometimes we have those who are held, they're embalmed, and we hold them at our morgue. I'll never charge for that.
Oh, naturally, we'd never.
They will stay there the whole 6 months until they're ready to go to Arlington. But for those who abuse the system, it would be nice to have some sort of fee built in there. And some of them would pay it and be happy to, but.
Well, we don't want to incentivize them to pay it and be happy, and then you're stuck without storage, so we gotta.
No, agreed. But, you know, if they needed to, they would be happy to do that. So it would kind of be a win-win.
I think maybe between now and next reading, if you'd get with the administrator with a recommended fee that you feel like would do the kind of incentivizing we need to do in that regard, that would be great.
Okay, Ms. McGriff's doing quick math over here, but I don't think we have the quick math to include what 3.5% more would it be for the sheriff's department.
No, I didn't do that. I was just doing what
Well, I think-
Alan said about fire services and Carla for the coroner's office.
Well, I think while we're having this discussion, we need to know exactly what we're talking about if we're going to increase millage and stuff.
Well, now, wait a minute. First of all, I want us to go back through the base budget and look at it a bit more carefully than what we have. I think we can save a lot of millage by sharpening the pencil. But yes, if we, I know the sheriff has numbers on 10%, whatever. I'm not sure what percentage he got. I don't want to put words in his mouth. I'd rather him tell us. But he knows his amount, what he needs. I know what the fire needs are, 280. Okay? And then EMS, I haven't had the time to look at theirs as closely as I have those two. But I will tell you, I ruined Darren's weekend working on the fire. He was at a family reunion or something, and I was having to call him while he was having a good time with his family.
So Clay, do you have an amount?
Is that with fringe? Okay.
With those three, the coroner, firefighters, and EMS, my math is $668,000. That's not counting the millage increase for the sheriff. I think we got to leave that up to the finance department to do that.
I get a little bit of clarity when you're talking dollar amounts. For instance, fire. So I don't have the dollar amount in front of me, but we factored the 6.5% raise, but then also getting them to a pay structure that they've identified where firefighter one has a certain amount. And so from the recruitment retention pool that we said is $360,000, 150 of that was allocated to the fire department to get them up to the pay structure and hierarchy that we're talking about. I don't know if that equals the 280, but I'm trying to figure out if you're at a percentage or if you're actually working from their proposed pay scale for all the positions.
I did it myself by individual employee and by their hire dates and things like that. I did my own little HR study for the fire, and I felt like to try to keep it as close to reasonable as possible, you know, I tried to take those factors into consideration, and that's why I was calling Darren, because I was like, you know, this guy's got more experience than this guy. What do you think? Kind of attitudes.
So that's in addition to the 6.5%?
No. It would not be in addition. So we could net out the 6.5 if y'all go along with what I.
It could be a lower percentage?
Oh, it'd be a higher percentage.
Higher percentage. That's the question I'm asking.
All right, but will it be 280 on top of the 6% increase?
No.
Okay, that's the so.
That's included in, right, Alan?
But so the fire service has presented a pay scale, kind of like a career ladder. They presented a pay structure. And so based upon what they've outlined, that a firefighter 1 starts at this, a firefighter 2, captain, lieutenant, on around, that they've identified that. So we've been working with that to meet that pay structure that they've presented, and so it factors to 6.5%, and then the additional $140,000 from the recruitment and retention pool to get them to implement that pay structure. So I don't know if that, it doesn't sound like you followed the pay structure that they've talked about. You just came up with some thoughts on where you thought each position should be?
Yes.
Okay, but they presented a pay structure that we've gone forward with.
And
Of course, we can ask them what they want, but I'm just saying that when you look at the ones that were given to us way back when, before last Thursday, when you looked at the comparables, I just simply said to get us not even past the comparables, but maybe up to it for the most part, especially with the first firefighter, the beginning firefighters, grossly behind. And I've got a spreadsheet right here, and I don't know if.
So you went individual position.
Yeah, it's 280,513, and then it is also, that would be, you'd add your fringes on top of that.
So the 6% was how much, many dollars was it? Do we know? For the firefighters?
6.5%. What was that total?
I don't know off the top of my head if we've broken out by those numbers.
But that's in your proposed budget.
Correct, the 6.5%.
So we won't be adding on 280, we'll be adding on a fraction.
That's within, yeah, that's within there. So I guess I would rather we go with a pay structure identified by the fire department for the position based upon what they've done for research from the area and for the position. So we have a structure identified that they said the beginning firefighter will start at this, and then a firefighter 2 will be at this. And so I just think it's better to have a system in place to work from that the fire department's presented.
Alan, your system was based on conversations with Darren?
Well, only when I thought I needed clarification, but if you look at the 6.5, that would be 126,973. Okay? So
Say that again,
126,973, 126,973.
For fire?
Uh-huh.
And it was what was
So
that
then
amount?
280.
350.
So I'm assuming when you talk about you work with the fire department, you work with Darren on getting the Darren, can you address this?
Everybody understand this is not Darren's study.
I understand that, but I just want to understand if Darren agrees with the pay structure that he submitted to administrator.
At a previous council meeting, Mr. Blackman gave me the spreadsheet he's worked on, and I did look at that spreadsheet. And based on our career ladder, or not career ladder, but career development plan is what we were calling it, when we take all of the account into the training and the certifications that people have, his numbers are going to be very close. Actually, it should be a little bit higher, but I understand we're working within limitations. When I saw the budget on Friday, when we got the spreadsheets, I was thinking what you've got for the 144 budget is probably about 50,000 low, which would bring it, by the time you add all the budgets together, it would get it about in line with where his numbers are. Based on when we put our career ladder program, development program into the what people are actually making.
Dennis, these numbers you used in your chart that you got Lancaster County firefighter, minimum 41, maximum 64.
Correct, yeah, that's it.
Okay. And the Lancaster City, 36 minimum, 45 maximum.
Yeah, that's a comparison, yeah.
That's a comparison, so. And that's figuring your percentage in to come up with that.
Yeah, so the
That's the
6.5% with the additional money from would get them to that pay structure that you're looking at, the 41,000 for a firefighter 1, for a beginning firefighter. It'd be the higher rate. It'd be the higher rate.
I think the city's higher than that on start out.
What was that there?
I think they're at 41 or 42 for start out.
We're saying 41.
Change.
Yeah, I thought you had said 36.
Oh, no, that's what
No,
the
city-
comparison.
The city, Lancaster City's 36.6 minimum and 45 maximum.
I think they're at 41, 42 for minimum for a starting out firefighter.
Okay.
So that's a firefighter with training. That's,
I used 42,000 for that starter firefighter. The reason I did that was because they are 41 and change, but at the same, so that takes them over. But guess what? When they get their next pay raise, meaning this July 1, they're
they're
going to be
talking
higher
about
than
another
ours.
6%.
Sir?
They're talking about another 6% is what I've
So
heard.
that'll be 5% more than ours on July 1. And if y'all want to add 5% to mine, that's fine. Because I honestly think we can look at this budget. We got $3.4 million in new tax dollars, and y'all still don't want to agree with me about that airport money. But if the FAA is going to pay 95% of 60% of that building, that's going to pick us up $1.5 million right there that we don't need to have in the budget.
Let's not talk about that.
Well, I'm just saying, there's plenty of money without a millage increase. You don't want to talk about that? Well, I don't want to talk about a millage increase.
Well,
Not when
that's your position.
not when we can,
Do
not when
that.
we can fund adequately the emergency services, the first responders, the coroner's office, and then look at what's left over to decide how we do everything else.
But you know, I said last time, I don't like moving money around like that. If we're gonna do it, we know that we need an increase. We know what it's gonna take to bring them to where they need to be. We don't need to start pulling from other budgets, a pinch here, a pinch there. We just need to make the decision on what we're gonna do and do it.
How much is the airport gonna cost us?
Let's not talk about the airport. We're not talking about that tonight.
Why?
We're talking about the firefighters, the sheriff, and EMS.
I'm talking about available money.
No, you're talking about money that we've already set aside for the airport is what you're talking about.
We set aside the same thing as we did last time, and we're not gonna need it all because now we've got the 95% money that everybody wanted to wait on.
Yep. Well, the big question to me is if we do that this year, how are we going to fund it next year?
No,
Because we're not going to have the millage next year to be able to take that into account with the money that we're going to have coming in next year.
The airport right now is in this budget at 3.5.
One-time money.
That was a full pay, right? To build that airport without 95%?
I agree with that.
Okay, so when we get the 95% money, we don't need all that money. That was the point in asking for the grant.
Well, that money should go back to fund balance. It's not reoccurring money.
This is excessive right now. Dennis has got a proposal to spend $7 million of fund balance and we're gonna have the highest fund balance ever when this budget's over, and I'm not against that. I'm for that, but I'm just saying that we've got this money set aside for an airport that the FAA is paying 95% of 60%. So therefore, we don't need all the money we set aside.
If you can put together a spreadsheet how we're going to finance this going forward, not this year, but the next year, the next year, the next year, then I'd be willing to go along with it.
It is reoccurring.
Yeah, and the reason
We ain't gonna
why,
have that airport money next year.
and guess what?
Think
With
about
that budget, it may be an increase in the bill of the structure of the airport, the costs. We got to look at that. We don't budget reoccurring, we don't use that money for reoccurring items. We just don't.
Well, let's end this discussion because we're not going anywhere. The main thing we're focusing on, I think, is public service, public safety, and then the rest of the budget. So.
Yeah, and I think, but we are focusing on, can we find the money elsewhere in the budget without the millage increase? I mean, I think that's.
I really don't
I think I think that's a issue, and you're contending the airport is, but there may be some other sources.
And then, too, I am worried about the next year budget. Because if we stay on this downward slope that we're on right now because we are not growing, we had over $5 million in new money last year. This year with 3.4. What's it going to be next year if the economy
Less than
stays
that.
the same? But again, all that's within our base budget right now, and I'm satisfied we can easily, we could easily do a continuation budget next year and not miss a beat.
Well, is next year the reassessment year, the 23-24 budget year, or is it going to be the 24-25 budget year?
But we're, in theory, not supposed to really have a big increase because of reassessment,
Right.
lower the millage. Yeah, well, we can save that for another day. Let's just focus on the expenditures. What are your priorities?
Thank you, Alan.
Just trying to help you out, Ms.
You
McGriff.
helped me a lot.
I think we're all on the same path that we want to bring our emergency services up, and I think along the same line, we need to make sure that we're bringing our other line employees up too, because, you know, we have to work as a team, and I know different people make different things, but, you know, we got to balance it out so that we're not putting more emphasis on one section than we are the other. And I know that we're definitely in the hold on all these people, and I agree with you, we need to get it up.
I would like to know what that 6% is for the firefighters and the sheriff and EMS, that if you're not giving them that, if we're going to give them that other increase, you're not going to need quite as much.
That's all inclusive, right?
Well, say it again, are you wanting the difference between the 10% and this?
You got the 6% in there now for.
6.5, yeah, 6.5.
6.5, right, okay. If you give this extra 280,000 Alan's talking about, you're not going to get a 6.5% too, right?
He's including the 6.5.
Yeah, that's inclusive of that.
So you're including the 6.5.
Yeah, he's included, he said.
280
It's total.
minus the 6.5
Minus the
leaves you a net of 153,027. Now, I think in this budget, so we got the 126 in this budget. I'm looking at 280. We got 126.9 already in the budget, and I think there's an extra 30,000 thrown in for pay issues. So that still leaves 123,000 that we will have to come up with.
That's
Mr.
just
Chair,
fire
can I
service
ask
only.
Clay a question?
I don't understand your math on that, because we've got 6.5% and you're wanting to go up 3.5% and you're wanting to go up 3.5%. Your 3.5% is more than the 6.5%.
Yeah, that's right. I'm not.
No, I'm not talking about the sheriff's 10%, right? Okay, fire's more than that as a percentage. Theirs is 14.36%.
Okay.
That includes the 6.5%, correct?
It won't be that much more. I mean, he's.
See, 280 is what I recommend. 6.5% is what's in the budget.
Is that what amount?
That's 126,000.
Well,
So we need 150.
Marshall's already close. He's
Hey,
already got
can we get Clay up here, because I think we're doing this wrong.
You got 140?
He's got 140 additional.
Mr. Chair, we got Clay here. Are we discussing these numbers correctly, Clay?
We're talking
Well,
about.
we haven't even talked about Clay's numbers.
Yes, we are, because that's included.
No.
Give me 1 minute. I asked Mr. Marshall. I got it. Let me have my conversation with him right quick.
So the fire
Fire
budget,
service budget is 6.5%.
yes,
Plus 140.
roughly 130 in the 330,000 for the compensation
of
and
the-
retention adjustment on top, which will get them to what originally was presented to me.
280.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I'm trying to make sure, if there's a percentage you're trying to get to, or trying to understand if there was something to make sure we're in sync. But that does get to the firefighter one, or beginning firefighter, at the 41,000 level. So I was following the pay scale that was originally presented from the fire service, and that amount, the 6.5% plus the 130, would get them to the pay scale that we originally talked about.
That's going to be pretty close to Alan's number.
Are we explaining that? Are we explaining that correctly?
Yes.
What the number Mr. Marshall is talking about is the base salary numbers. But in our career development plan that we did, you remember at the Cal meeting, we gave you that presentation. It was all part of the merger, as well as the career development was the last part of that presentation. When we ran numbers looking at how the career development plan would figure in too, for people with time and grade, degrees, training, certifications, all of those things that make that a valuable employee, the numbers are going to be short. But the numbers that Mr. Blackman has come up with, and he did that irrespective of our plan, but his numbers are right pretty much on the money.
Okay, that's all.
So the
Okay.
whole thing is about, I think, about 150,000 if you take into account all 44 employees. Indian Land, Pleasant Valley, all the guys here and ladies here, and the Kershaw firefighters. And I've still got to deal with the Kershaw Town Council on their.
Okay, I think we're pretty close on
Yeah,
that.
I'm getting it now. And Clay, now will you explain yours?
So for us, I submitted twice a career letter, basically, and it was based on years of service, education, certification levels. They didn't want to accept that, so I went back and did my own study based on the surrounding counties. You would have to give us a minimum of an 8% across the board salary increase just to meet the minimum of what a Kershaw County EMT is making. So we've got employees making $12.25, theirs make $14. 8% gets them to $14 an hour. Chester County makes $15 an hour, so you would have to go up 10% across the board just to meet Chester County. And that's across the board for paramedic, advanced, and EMT. That would make us comparable and compatible with the surrounding counties. Even though a Chester County, for example, runs 6,000 calls a year, we're running 20,000 calls a year. I mean, for example, a while ago, war stories, while we were sitting in here, there was not an ambulance available in Lancaster County. We had Charlotte Mecklenburg running calls in Indian Land. We also had a lady that we were interviewing Friday who we were going to offer a job to. She sent us an email while we're sitting in here, and she says, because she asked us, what is your starting salary? We told her what the starting salary was. She sent us an email tonight. She said, I accept another job today, making more money. So we're having problems filling trucks because people are leaving us. I have 12 vacancies right now, 20 people on a shift. I have almost one complete shift that I can't staff because we're short. That's on top of 4 people that's out because of workers' comp injuries or personal injuries or a baby. So that's 16 people I got that cannot work right now out of 3 shifts. That's how short we are. And the people don't care about that when they call 911. They want a truck. I mean, we had a gunshot a while ago. We had a vehicle extrication. We had chest pain calls. They call, we haul.
So Clay, when you give out you said 350,000 is what you need?
$350,000 was the 8%.
Okay,
That's the minimum that I would like to have. Now, granted, I would like to be more comparable and be able to attract good people from other places, like they're taking our people. 10% across would do that for us.
But you would also,
but it's not three.
the fire and the sheriff have the career type ladder.
I've got a career letter on my computer that I submitted, but we were told that I didn't need to submit that because they wasn't interested in a career ladder for EMS.
No, but there's 6.5% already in his increase, so it's not the full 350. Is that correct?
Yes, I'd say yes.
Yeah,
I think the 350, part of that's been accounted for from the 6.5.
Right.
So we need to know what that difference is
I'd do
too.
another 3.5.
So I took every one of my employees and figured every employee individually based on their current salary with the 8%. That's how I came up with that number.
Dennis, what is your numbers that you got calculated in now, as far as the 6.5% plus the extra that you?
It's just a 6.5% for EMS is what's factored in for their salary.
Okay.
Yeah, just
I
not
seen
they're not.
something in there for 80,000 that you had something for EMS.
What? Oh, the part-time.
That was part-time. Okay.
Yeah, the part-time.
Okay, I know I seen something for 80,000. Okay.
And now make sure we understand apples to apples. So, Mr. Cato, our scheduled hours we schedule our employees on
2472.
which is
2448, excuse me.
24, which isn't.
Love to do 2472.
which isn't universal in
It is not. It is compared to the Kershaw County. So if you compare to apples, us in Kershaw County work the same amount of hours in the same schedule. They work 10,000 calls, we run 20,000 calls. They make more than us and work less.
Mr. Chair, it sounds like we're going to have some more numbers, and I don't know if we can get that done by the second reading, and we may have to have a special meeting to discuss this.
How much more of that what does the 6.5% for EMS? He needs 380,000 total. Do you know what the 6.5 would be that you already got budgeted in?
Yeah, because it's by position. Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out how much more we got to put to it.
You're right, a lot of this,
Those
We
three,
can go to the general ledger account right now and look at EMS wages, see the 6% there. And by the way, as I went through this book, y'all, like the communications group, they're like a 20% increase in wages. Some are at 7.5, some are at 6, some are at 6.5 departments. I don't understand the application of 6.5%. It must be that new math I never learned when I was in
that's what it is.
There's
Mr. Chairman, I told a couple of people this, to go to bat for my staff, don't give me a raise this year, give it to my staff. And that's what, I mean, I'm serious about that. Don't give it to me, give it to the guys and gals that work on the street.
You're not going there, Mr. Kate.
Oh, well, I'm offering.
No,
Thank you, but we don't accept.
we don't accept.
But we do hear you. We hear the sheriff and we hear the EMS there. We hear you. I couldn't think of your name there. But I think what we need now is numbers to make sure of what we're giving, like a 8% to Clay, 10% to the sheriff, and whatever percent to Darren. We need to know these numbers. Can we vote on this reading tonight dependent on the presentation of those numbers?
You can always vote first reading and
First reading.
require extra
Second
information.
reading, you bring us
We don't
those
want to change
numbers.
on third reading.
The question I got is, you know, we're going to go to second reading, and second reading, we're going to vote on, and very seldom are you shouldn't change it on third reading.
No third reading. But
So
second
that's
reading
why
we
I'm
should.
suggesting that maybe there should be a workshop in between this and the next reading.
Well, I'll tell you right now, I'm voting against this budget, period, because I asked for an organizational chart to be a part of our budget process, and I hadn't seen it in this data I've been looking at over the weekend. So until that becomes a part of the budget, I will vote down every single time.
Well, I will vote on this tonight depending on whether what we discuss will be presented with actual numbers in our second reading.
I'm suggesting we can't wait to second reading to get it because
No, we can, in the second reading, well, we can have the workshop in the middle.
I'm with Terry. I think it's best to vote this down or just delay it.
I'm going to pass it, but I'm really going to make a motion that we have a special meeting to get
before
these
the
numbers
second
before the
reading.
second reading. That's kind of what
Okay, I'm good with that.
what I feel like we ought to do, because we don't need to be coming to second reading and getting these numbers and
Discussion.
Yeah, you're going to be.
All right,
and
if
having to
we're-
vote on.
If we're going to have, I have no problem calling a workshop or whatever, but we need to direct staff exactly what information.
Well,
I think we need to take these percentages we've talked about, and we need to translate it into numbers for us. Clay said 8% gets him to the minimum, 10% gets him to where he wants to be. We probably need to see two different sets of numbers to see what that is. Same with the sheriff and same with fire.
You just guys tell me what you need, and I'll get it.
Well, we just got to take from where we're at to get to where you want it, where we need to be. And it's easy math to do the difference. Coming up with the money, then it's going to be the hard part.
That's why they pay you the big bucks.
I would like to know the numbers on, you know, how many, I know we're going to lose fire, I know we're going to lose EMS, I know we're going to lose sheriff, but I'd like to know how many employees have we lost in the last year because of that?
And the other thing,
Mine's 20-something. I've lost 20-something.
the other thing we need to do is, or at least I think this way, is that we need to know numbers in yearly salary or starting salary, whatever. You know, I don't want to talk about $14 an hour because you got overtime in there and you got to extrapolate it. So we need to know what a yearly salary is and then work from there.
How soon you want it?
I guess our council, whenever the chair.
Between
calls that
now and when we have our workshop.
Yeah.
we will have that provided by the budget office. And depending upon our date, I mean, we'll work on the turnaround this week. So we'll work on some of these. But now make sure I'm clear. If you're saying you want two numbers for EMS, 8%, 10%, you want 10% for the sheriff, and then for fire,
Gave us an amount. He didn't give us,
percent.
okay.
So we'll work from those numbers. Okay.
All right,
You're basically talking about another 8% too.
Now, Ms. McGriff, are we in agreement here?
We are to a point.
Okay.
Wow.
Hallelujah. Do y'all won't hear this very often?
point?
You
A
better
point?
write this
Which
down in your
point?
date book.
All right, so can we vote on this and then just?
Make a motion.
Well, I'm going to amend, I guess I'm going to make an amendment to say that, no, I don't have to amend it because we're going to have first reading, but do we need to make, what do we do about the workshop? Do we have to create a motion for that or not?
He's going to call that. The chair can call that meeting.
Okay.
You make
I'm
the
good.
motion.
Well,
The motion has been made, right?
Yeah, the motion's
Well,
been
it's
made.
ready to be made. I don't need, I was just, I just didn't know whether we had to make a motion, so we're
We
good.
need to schedule, well, look on and vote on first reading, then y'all
Yes.
vote
Yeah.
on first reading.
Yes.
All right, we have a motion for approval of first reading of our budget. All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, likewise.
The reading of the budget, you're saying?
Yes.
Opposed.
Hey, all right.
First reading passes by 5-4 and one opposed. And what Mr. Mosteller is requesting 6 o'clock.
Let's see, Monday we got,
Monday is Memorial Day
I know that.
and my birthday, so we can't meet then.
Do it Monday.
And I prefer, I mean, I work during the day. It's tough to get off the farm.
So we can't have a midday meeting? That's not good?
No?
Yeah, this shouldn't take over 30 minutes.
No. If we got the right information, if we are good on the numbers, it's probably an hour and a half.
Probably not a
What
midday,
universe
but
are you living in?
I hate to ask staff to come back in at
Well, what about 4 o'clock? 4 o'clock work, Billy? 4 o'clock.
4 o'clock, what day?
earlier than 4.
What day?
Wednesday or Tuesday.
30th or the
Tuesday, we
30th or
got that
31st?
tour, don't we?
We do have a tour on the
On
30th. That's,
the 30th?
yeah, on the 30th. And then the 31st.
We have a tour of what?
Some of us are going to tour the property up there along the river.
When is that? The 30th.
Tuesday the 30th.
So Wednesday?
Wednesday at 4 o'clock.
Wednesday at 4 will work.
The 31st?
31st.
Where you gonna be? You won't
I'll
be here?
baby, because you know what?
I thought he wasn't gonna be here.
I just hope Jose can be there, because I sure miss him tonight. That's the auditor's favorite council person. She's not even listening. Said that was your favorite council person is not here. I said, I miss him.
No, we're not.
I don't have anything against the fire department, EMS, sheriff's department, but what I do in my office pays their salaries. I bill out property taxes. I bill out vehicle taxes every month. So I think my staff deserves a raise also. My staff, I lost an employee this week. He gave me his 2 weeks' notice because he got a better offer in the private sector. You know what my starting salary is for my clerk? $13.50. And I don't think anybody out here in this audience would want to come work in my office for $13.50 and have to put up with some of the taxpayers we have to put up with.
I think you got
And did you address,
headed for them, Dennis.
It is in there, yes.
Yeah.
To bring mine up at least to the minimum, yes.
Yeah, so, yeah, that part of the compensation and adjustment, her office does have some money from that fund 6.5%, and then certain positions on the clerk ones and clerk twos that she's talking about would be addressed in that adjustment pool. But again, I don't know if that percentage would put those at a
We have,
6%, 8%, I mean, 8% raise or,
we have those numbers too, please.
yeah, we do have those.
Yeah, he's got those. Yes, thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, again, I've said this at one of our last meetings, we have to look at our pay chart, and as a council, we have to adopt that. Whatever, we can modify it if you guys want to, whatever four of us say, but this minimum stuff is, if staff has moved that without our knowledge, and they've moved it at 8% when we only give 6% pay raises, more and more of our employees get below the minimum every year. We need to set that pay scale to our liking, whatever that liking is, and then every year we decide how much we move it up. And and again, it would be at the discretion of council only. And at the same time, I recommend going forward that, just as a general rule of thumb, we give a certain amount of cost of living, we give a certain percentage for longevity, and then Dennis wants to move to evaluation type money. A certain portion of their pay raise going forward will be based on evaluations, but at least 2/3 would be based on what we decide we're going to move the chart to. That stops. Then we give them a longevity, those that have been here for a year and have been performing adequately, and then we can tack on some sort of incentive pay on top of that. What? No, I mean, I want to talk about it now. I want to. No, anytime. We can do it after the budget's. No, let's do it before this ever comes about next year and start having some personnel policies that make sense.
That sounds like we need that 2-day retreat that Bodner had.
Now, Bodner, for a consultation fee, will lead us in that 2-day. I'm sure he'll be glad to help us going forward.
In Florida?
That's what Zoom's all about.
Okay, let's move down to our discussion and action items. We have approval of reappointments to various boards and commissions. Are there?
Motion to approve.
Have a motion for Mr. Carr and a second for Ms. McGriff. All in favor, raise your right hand. We have unanimous approval. Anything on our table? Nothing? All right, so it's 8:54. I have a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
Motion for Mr. Graham, a second for Mr. Carnes. All in favor, raise your right hand. We have unanimous approval to.
And thank all y'all for coming.